The Leap Foundation proudly presents the Meet the Mentor podcast with Dr. Bill Dorfman. Dr. Bill is a TV host, New York Times best-selling author, two-time Guinness World Book record holder, fitness guru, celebrity cosmetic dentist, and philanthropist who founded the Leap Foundation. Here's Dr. Bill.
Hey, Dr. Bill here. So we are going to have another metal man today, Dr. Fred Moss, in a moment. But let me tell you a little bit about this podcast. So we started doing this podcast at Leap because we had all these great speakers, Paula Abdul, Mark Wahlberg, Michael Strahan, Hannah Brown from The Bachelor, Kathy Bates, Anthony Hopkins, Jason Alexander, Eric Garcetti, our mayor. I mean, all these great people. And I thought, this material is just too good to kind of sit there. So we went ahead and we put it on this podcast, and the podcast exploded. We're in the top 2.5 percentile of all podcasts worldwide. So Fred's like, really? Yeah. So it's been pretty amazing. This year, Leap is going to be live. Unless UCLA changes, it will be July 17th to the 23rd, and it will be in the same beautiful ballroom. The Pacific Ballroom is Palisades is amazing, and hopefully we'll have about 500 students there. I'm hoping John's son, who does our podcast for us, will be a coach there. And I just got back from University of the Pacific Dental School, where I was the keynote speaker at their conference. And I saw my good friend, Sam Zarabi, who's a dentist, and he's going to sponsor one student from each of his dental centers. He's got 30 dental centers in Texas and neighboring states. So we're super excited about that. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our mentor, Dr. Fred Moss. He is a holistic physician, a restorative coach, podcaster, and a psychiatric expert witness at Welcome to Humanity with Dr. Fred Moss. Over the last 4 years, Dr. Fred has been firmly entrenched in the mental health system. First as a child care worker, and then as an internationally well-known psychiatrist. Dr. Fred has been committed to the notion that communication, connection, creativity, and conversation are at the heart of all healing of all conditions and all types. As a founder of Welcome to Humanity movement and the True Voice podcasting mastermind methodology, Dr. Fred's life mission has now become to assure that all people know who they are, what they do matters, and that their voice, no matter where they come from or how small they are going to matter and to be heard. So Dr. Fred, thank you for coming, and welcome to Meet the Mentor.
It's just great. Thank you for having me. It's what a true honor to be with you, Dr. Bill, and thank you so much for having me as a guest. I can't wait for moving ahead with this conversation.
So why don't you tell our listeners what you do? Because this is like a long bio, and we actually shortened it down. It was 17 pages, and we shortened it down a bit. But what do you do, Fred?
Yeah, so typically these days what I'm really doing is helping people find their true voice. You know, the greatest threat in the world these days is that people are no longer speaking their true voice or having it taken away from them. So in those 40 years that I've been in the mental health field, and frankly in the 64 years that I've been on Earth, I've really been focused on the exquisite nature of communication to make a difference in the world and be at the heart of all healing. So communication, conversation, creativity, and specifically human connection at the foundation of all healing of all types. Frankly, whether it be dental, whether it be psychiatric, or whether it just be friends and family. And what I'm really speaking to these days is bringing that expertise, that history that I've had, where learning how to communicate, learning how to listen, learning how to be with another, learning really how to connect, and then how to heal, and then love as a function of that, has become part of who I am. And I'm helping others to do that through various methods. Maybe not 17 pages, but probably at least 8 or 9.
So what is it that you're doing? Are you doing one-on-one counseling? Are you doing, seminar? What is it that you're doing actually?
Yeah, so these days I am doing one-on-one counseling, and I also have a new program coming out that's it's not one-on-one counseling, it's one-on-one coaching. I think there's a significant difference between counseling and coaching. And also doing a little bit of group masterminding as well with people who are eager to bring that true voice out, maybe having lived a duplicitous life or a life that was inauthentic, and now getting the urgency of the times, who are ready to step into their true self. So that comes from coaching and from group coaching. One of the things that my life has led to is making a difference for people who are in really unfortunate or desperate situations. So recently, with the war breaking out over there in Eastern Europe, I have created an upcoming summit for which Dr. Bill is one of the participants. Basically what I'm doing is interviewing 18 or 24 different people who are influencers, at least to start with, and we're raising awareness. We are gathering influencers to raise awareness and to raise millions for the people in Ukraine and for other war-torn areas where people are having their voices squelched, where they're being suppressed in their capacity to speak their trueness or in capacity to speak free speech.
So tell me, what was your educational background that got you into this? Because you're kind of like a Renaissance man. I mean, there's so many different things you're doing. How did you prepare yourself for this?
Well, again, I don't know about Renaissance man, but here's what I have. I was a precocious child. I grew up, I was born to a family that already had a brother 10 years older than me and a brother 14 years older than me. And so they taught me how to speak and how to add and how to write long before I even went into kindergarten, how to do mathematics. I was already adding, subtracting in kindergarten. And so I was always really, really enchanted with communication and really felt that communication was at the center of everything. But school wasn't that fun for me, as it turns out, except it was fun kind of causing problems and making noise and giving the teacher a little bit of heat. And there's no elementary school teacher who forgot having me as a student, I'm pretty sure. And so that junior high would show me how to actually communicate like the big kids. But it didn't happen in junior high. So then I was like, okay, here comes high school. I'll do it in high school. And it didn't happen in high school either, because it actually got worse. Communication and connection even got worse in high school. So I was like, okay, college will be where it is. So I went to my favorite college because I love their helmets at the University of Michigan. And I was there for a term and a half or so, and I then realized that really communication wasn't the point of conventional education either. It was the idea of really sitting there, watching closely, and then regurgitating word for word what the teacher wanted me to say in order to be called a good student. And although I could do that, it just seemed like such a waste of time. So I dropped out of college. I went around the country looking for myself. I found myself a little bit in California, but that wasn't going to work. So back to Michigan I went, try one more time, and went back to school to learn computers. Maybe that would be a lucrative field that could set me up for life. I didn't last but a term and a half there and dropped out again. I came home and I told my mom, I'm not going to do school anymore. That's it. We're done. No more college. And she got me a application for becoming a child care worker at a state hospital in Northwestern Detroit. And I thought I'd only stay long enough, Bill, to get 3 weeks worth of paychecks, buy myself a car, and head on out the road again. But on the 4th week, my friend Paul convinced me to go up to the floors, and I started working with 15-year-olds, 14, 15, 16-year-olds who were institutionalized, but I didn't see them as having anything wrong with themselves at all. It was just human beings. They were just like my friends, my homies, like another human trying to figure out how to live. And in that world, again, communication, connection, and creativity became the source of my job. And I began to really enjoy the afternoon shift at the state hospital, taking the kids out on field trips and, eating dinner with them, getting them ready for bed, all those things that I got to do on afternoon shift. And frankly, the thing I hated the worst was how psychiatry was treating the kids. We'd call the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist, we'd tell him Johnny was up too late or Timmy got in a fight with Jimmy, and he'd come down and write a note in the chart, and then we'd have to hold down the kid and inject him full of some medicines. And if he, take him out of his misery for 12 or 24 hours, and we would call that a success story. But I never, ever, ever thought that was a good deal. And in fact, decided that I needed to do something by it, and that I would have to now go back to school to learn how to be a psychiatrist to bring communication back into the essence of mental health. The next 13 years, that's exactly what I did. And lo and behold, I graduated Northwestern University and off into, every form of psychiatry that I could find in the United States is what I've been doing for the last 32 years. I've been all over this whole country and frankly done some international work as well. Lived in Israel while I was working in California via telehealth, for instance. And the whole point is that it all distills down to communication being so much more important than any type of diagnoses or medications or even therapeutic interventions. Like you said, counseling. I don't like to use the word counseling because that creates a power gradient between the counselor and the counselee, as if that's a word. And the idea that that can never be, that is always leverage and can never really create a level playing ground. I like having a level playing ground where I'm really looking across the table at another human, where I'm really looking across the Zoom room at another human, where I really get that there is no diagnosis that is that person other than who they've been for their life. And each of us are just finding a way to, take another step in the world. And when we're together, when we communicate, when we resonate together, when we're listened to, that's when we make the biggest difference. And that's where healing emanates from. That's the whole point of Welcome to Humanity. And that's the whole point of Find Your True Voice as well. And it's just like a natural progression at this point that what I'm really doing has nothing to do with the conventional treatment, the conventional wisdom that I gained in my 26 years of conventional education. It has everything to do with what I learned in the streets, what I learned with other folks, what I learned with the kids, what I learned in Chicago or in Detroit or in Tel Aviv. And it's really an opportunity to really be aligned with myself and carry on that which I knew when I was 4 years old in that playpen. And that was, again, connection is really at the heart of all love and all healing.
So you basically, as a holistic physician, psychiatrist, you've gone ahead and you've created a podcast. You've created these mastermind groups to help, people kind of find their true voice and communicate better. You've written books. I'm sure you lecture all over the place. I mean, how did you prepare yourself? Well, let's start with the podcasting. Like, how did you learn how to do podcasts? Did you just go out there and do it? Or did you also take a course that you're now teaching people?
No, it was a matter of really going out and doing it. I was a natural, like I said, just being sort of the loudmouth all the way through my life and really loving speaking, loving communicating, loving learning about people. When podcasting became a thing, even as far back as 12 or 15 years ago, I was totally curious about it. And then a few years ago, I had some, I finally picked up maybe a little bit because of metal, I suppose, but also because of other connections that I had. I started hanging out with people that were worth interviewing, hanging out with people that I really wanted to learn about them, really. And so I'd pick up a mic and we began the Welcome to Humanity podcast.
And what do you talk about on the podcast?
Well, I think what we're really looking at is embracing all aspects of humanity as being exquisite components, exquisite foundations for what it is to be human. So a lot of people are in pain. A lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are uncomfortable with life. And then other people, are feeling like aimless or afraid, anxious or depressed. And we start really looking at when we're able to come to grips with what's really happening for us right now. And no matter whether you're an icon with millions of followers or just another human being who is not a household name, there's so much about us that are similar. We all are facing such similar struggles. And what we really want more than anything is to be heard, and to be heard for who we really are. Because from that resonating point is where this healing we're talking about takes place. And I think the conversations in Welcome to Humanity podcast eventually lead to that same road, that there's the essence of humanity that we're all experiencing that creates a unification rather than a separation between those on the high side of notoriety and those people who are just maybe living in institutions or anything like that, and not very far between us.
I mean, I can tell from the passion in your voice that you love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is it you love the most about what you do?
I love meeting really, really fascinating people who then get to ask me about what I'm up to. And more than anything, I get to ask them and add to my bank of all the many ways that people find to negotiate this thing called life on a day-to-day basis. I am totally fascinated with that and have been since the moment I popped out looking at my two brothers and my parents.
So if I were a student and I wanted to go into the same field as you and have a career like yours, what are some of the critical things I should do along, my journey?
Almost all the things I'm saying here weren't taught to me while I was sitting in class. What's really here is to be super curious, like to be super available, to wonder, to get that you maybe don't know that what you think you know about what's in front of you. Whether that's another person or whether that's a project or whether that's a challenge. The idea is to really be open to what's about to unfold and get that you're allowed to be surprised. You're allowed to be in wonder. And then when speaking, which is the other half of communication, can you speak to your truth even if it's uncomfortable or embarrassing? Even if it's like, you're afraid that you might be ostracized. Can you be authentic with your truth? And can you be open and wondering in your listening? Because from there, that's where pure communication comes from. And from there, again, healing and love, and that's where it emanates from. And it's the same thing little Freddy was saying when he was 3. He's saying right now when he's 64, but it's gone full circle to get there. And I think the idea is just to be open.
All right. I know you're a man of action and you've got a lot of stuff going on. What's next for Big Freddy?
Yeah, I think Big Freddy right here, I'm working with a team of people to really hone in on this message and make my biggest impact, pour it back on the community. I have had a full life. I've had 3 or 4 times of a full life. I've been around a little bit, and I've met, I've had 40,000 patients that I've entered charts in.
Wow.
And there's like, but that's just the patients. Then there's all the traveling I've done and all the phone calls I've made and the Zoom calls I've had and the emails that I've communicated with. And there's something like, okay, how can I make my largest contribution in such a way that it's not a burden to me and that it's not another boring story to others? So is it podcast guesting? I love podcast guesting. I was just saying that this morning. What a cool gig that is. I get to use your audience to bring my message forward. What a cool thing podcasting is. And I love being a podcast host for the same reason. You can use mine, as you have, by the way, having been on our show a little bit. And there's something like expert speaking, writing good books, and bringing forth a message that we all know anyways, which is we have been forced, or so we think, we have been forced to live a life where we are doing and saying things that is inconsistent with our core message. So the idea is to find whatever outlets possible to remind you that there is a true voice out there and you don't have to go looking for it because it's underneath all the muck that you've poured onto yourself. And to bring that true voice forward from within is all that's left to do in this world. Like the greatest tragedy, and I think it's Henry David Thoreau who said it, is that you would get through a life in quiet desperation and have your song unsung. And I'm saying today's the day to bring that voice forward. And anything I can do to source people to do that, I'm game. And I have a little bit of experience and a little bit of credentials to be the guy to be able to source that level of magic.
That's awesome. If my students want to contact you, what's the best way to reach you, Dr. Fred?
I would love to, first of all, I would love that. Let's make that really clear. I I have a full schedule, but I am ready for the next person to contact me. I've had a full schedule since I was 10. And so the time now is, the best way to get a hold of me would be through my email, which is drfred, drfred at welcometohumanity.net. Another way to get a hold of me would be, I think I'm just going to offer it to your listeners, would be to tap into, link it to findyourtruevoicebook.com. And I'll send anyone who says they want that book, I'll send it to them for free. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll get that to them, and I think from there you'll get a little greater access to who I really am as a leader, as a source, as a I suppose a coach, or all the many things I am, to be able to really get that now is the time to find your true voice. There's not tomorrow or next year to do that. It's like today.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Fred, thank you so much. That was very enlightening and inspiring. And if any of you students are listening and you want to reach Dr. Fred, now you know how to. And I appreciate your time and your passion and contributing to our Meet the Mentor podcast. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Dr. Bill, over and out.
To learn more about the LEAP Foundation, go to leapfoundation.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Leap Foundation or on Instagram at Leap Foundation. Listen to the Meet the Mentor podcast with Dr. Bill Dorfman on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.